Imagine, if you can, it's the Middle Ages in Europe. There are buildings going up all over the continent. They are magnificent cathedrals, and there are pilgrims who walk from one side of Europe to the other to see some of these cathedrals that are being built. A visitor walks up to a stonemason at one of these cathedrals and says, "What exactly are you doing?" And the stonemason says, "I am carving these stones as perfectly as I can so that they will fit together and make a perfect structure." So he wanders off to a second stonemason and says, "And what exactly are you doing?" And the second stonemason says, "I am helping to build a cathedral that will be loved for generations and generations to come." And then he goes to a third stonemason and says, "And what are you doing?" And the stonemason says, "I am helping celebrate the glory of God." Madam Toastmaster, ladies and gentlemen, all three stonemasons were doing exactly the same thing, but they expressed what they were doing in different ways. And that's pretty much how I see teaching and coaching and mentoring. They are essentially the same role, but they are expressed in different ways. Now, my speech today is entitled 2 Pages and a Lifetime of Learning. And the reason that it's called that is that I am expected in 2 pages to define what I have learned over the past 18 months in my project towards completing effective coaching. I am asked to list my achievements in Toastmasters in this recent path, from the small achievements to the largest successes. And I'm given 5 lines to do it. Don't think it's going to happen. List my achievements outside of Toastmasters from the smallest to the largest. And I've only got 4 lines for that. That's definitely not going to happen. Reflect on how much I have learned and gained. Describe the impact of being a Toastmaster. Think about my next steps and set new Toastmasters goals. Those I can do. And in fact, those I will do over the next 8 minutes or thereabouts. Why did I choose the effective coaching path as my first path in Pathways? Well, it's because for most of my life, I've been a teacher, either in an informal sense, in Toastmasters, or with my workplace where I taught less experienced journalists how to become better journalists. At least that's what I hoped I was teaching them. But I've also had some formal teaching experience for the past 20 years or thereabouts at university. I teach journalism. And one of the subjects that I teach, online journalism, or computer-assisted journalism as it was when it first started in 1999, I've been teaching that subject for longer than my current students have been alive. That's a depressing thought, I have to tell you. But what I've been teaching them is about how to use the technology, how to use computers, how to use computer-assisted journalism. The second subject, the one that I'm teaching these days, is radio journalism. I've been a radio journalist for 40 years. And so I like to think I have a few skills. And what I've been doing over the last few years is taking groups of up to 10 students and spending time with them, teaching them not only the basics of journalism, the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, and the how to check facts, how to get multiple sources so that your stories are balanced. We not only teach those things, but now we also teach them use of microphones, use of tape recorders, how to edit the talent so that you can have perhaps half a dozen or more audio grabs from your 3 interview subjects during a story. Then, over the period of the week, 5 times, they will put together a package of a story, each student, and then the 10 students combined put together a bulletin which goes to air live on one of our radio stations here in Brisbane. It's a scary thought for them, but the thing is, they rise to that challenge. There's a sensation that anybody who teaches knows that I call the light bulb moment. That is when you're watching a student and all of a sudden above their head, it's like a light bulb goes ding, and you realize they've got it. By George, they understand what you're doing. There is nothing that I enjoy more as a teacher than that sensation. But that's teaching. Teaching, as I mentioned, is slightly different to coaching and different to mentoring. Teaching is where I transfer knowledge from my head into the head of the students. I give them the information. That's teaching. Coaching is where I show them how to use the knowledge that they have gained and turn that into something specific. In the case of the radio programs that I'm talking about, they get to put together a 3-minute audio package, and they get to present it, and they get to learn how to read it as if they were talking to you rather than as if they were reading off the screen, because that's how most people read it. When they read out loud, they read just word by word. So we teach them those things, and we coach them into how to do it. Then there's mentoring, which is where you've given somebody the information, you've then given them a way of using it specifically, you've given them the tools which they then use for the rest of their lives. That's mentoring. Let me give you an example of some of the coaching and mentoring that I've done over the past 18 months. I am the Vice President for Education for one club. I'm President of another club. I've been involved in 10 clubs at one stage. I'm a glutton for punishment. But I'll give you one particular example, and that is of one of my proteges, a guy I'm particularly proud of. His name is Adrian. He came to one of my clubs having never been to Toastmasters except as a guest. He joined because he was becoming a student, a med student, and he knew he was going to have to present to his professors, he was going to have to present to his fellow students, he was going to have to present to his patients in ways that would get the information from his head into theirs as painlessly as possible. And he knew that he needed experience. So he joined Toastmasters. And I have to tell you that it's been an amazing experience to see him grow. I've helped him with most of his speeches. He would bring me the speech, we would discuss it, we would see what worked, what didn't, I would make suggestions, I would coach him on those. But I also mentored him, because when you're a university student, and particularly when you're doing something like medicine, it's sometimes important that you have a mentor who says to you, no, Toastmasters has to go on the back burner for a while, sunshine. You need to pass these exams. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. And I have to say, I am particularly proud of the way that he has developed. Some of the speeches that I've seen him give are just exemplary. So that's what I've been doing over the last 18 months. I've been learning. What have I learned about myself in that process? Quick show of hands, the Dunning-Kruger effect. Who has heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect, even if you don't know what it means? All right. The Dunning-Kruger effect, when most people think of Dunning-Kruger, is that people are not as good as they think they are. People are not as smart as they think they are. They're not as clever. They're not as humorous as they think they are. They think that they are better than they are. That's one aspect of the Dunning-Kruger effect. The other is that people who are good at things assume that everybody else knows the stuff that they know. You just don't think that this is not something that everybody is aware of. And as a coach, I've had to be conscious of the fact that A, I'm not as good as I think I am in some things, but B, my level of knowledge is in fact above the level of knowledge of those that I'm coaching. And I have to remember that and slowly bring them to my level rather than dumb myself down. So those are a couple of things that I have learned about myself. I've also learned that I do not want to be a life coach. Now, I took on this particular path thinking, yeah, I'd like to be a life coach. You know, they sit around on tropical islands talking to their clients over the phone saying, hey, this is what you do. No, that is not how it works. No. A life coach does not work 4 hours a week. They work 44, 64, 84 hours a week. Now, I gave up full-time work because I didn't want to do that anymore. And I don't want to do that as a life coach. But I am going to continue to develop my skills. I'm going to continue training through things like Udemy, which, by the way, has a sale on at the moment with a lot of their courses, which are normally up to $500. They're selling them for $10. It's really worth going to take a look. You've only got 2 days, but I just thought I'd mention that. I'll also use books, and I'm certainly going to continue to use Toastmasters to develop my training and coaching skills. But above all else, I'm going to learn not to try and do too much. I have to move back, because over the last 18 months, I have found that I have been coaching other people, but not getting enough coaching myself. So I'm going to step back and not burn out. So after 18 months, what do my 2 pages tell me? Well, they tell me that I've come away, but I've got a way to go. But that's all right. Anybody been driving around Egypt in the last 10 years or thereabouts? If you had, you would have seen there are a whole series of forests that are growing up in areas near Cairo, for example, in sand where nothing should grow, but they do. Why? What they're doing is they are planting trees, and then they are drip feeding them semi-treated sewage, basically sewage that has only been treated to the first level. So the particles have been settled, but there's still lots of heavy metals and things like that. The water is completely unsuitable for food, but it is perfectly suited for growing trees, which are used for furniture and for building and for firewood, and as a carbon sink to absorb all of the CO2 from urban centres like Cairo and send out life-giving oxygen. So that's what's been happening in the last 20 years. But that's not the only set of forests that have grown in otherwise inhospitable areas of Egypt. There have also been areas where trees have grown, but they've taken decades to grow. The Bedouins would plant a stick, essentially, and they would just keep watering it gently. And the stick wouldn't seem to grow. It'd be a stunted shrub, and it'd stay a stunted shrub. And you'd think, well, why are they doing this? Well, because under the ground, the roots were stretching out, and they were firming, and they were grabbing, and they were getting together and creating a network. And at a point which nobody could define, suddenly the tree would say, okay, my root structure is strong enough. I am now grounded enough. I am going to spring up, and you'll be surrounded by trees. That's happened. It's happened over generations. You never know when the tree that you have planted is suddenly going to sprout up. You never know when the student that you are coaching is going to have that light bulb moment. But when it happens, ladies and gentlemen, the joy that it brings is something that is beyond compare, and I'm going to continue searching for that. Adam Toastmaster.
Well done, Graham. Beautiful speech.